Clic, mao. Ça tue, ça blesse, ça flingue. Aïe, 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 mao. Gazo. Clic, mao.
Now and let the man do his thing. So, first off, a couple of things. I might be 51 years old, but when he introduced me as Mr. Aaron Ritter, I do not take myself that serious. So just call me Aaron. That's I would prefer that. And the second thing is, I'm supposed to be speaking up here about being ultra mobile with your saddle gear, and I'm literally tied off to this table. So this is going to be a little bit new for me because I've never been on a corded mic where I'm kind of anchored to one spot. So and I move, so bear with me on that. But I am Aaron Ritter, Limitless Outdoors, and I have the pleasure of speaking to all of you today about backcountry hunting in the modern tree saddle. But the first thing that I want to do before we start crawling into some contour lines, I want to set a base camp with you guys. And like I said, we're going to talk about some backcountry hunting here. Despite what a couple of faces out here in the crowd today might tell you, I am not an extremist. And I want you to understand that as we go through my methodologies, my thought processes, where and how I hunt, and some of the equipment that I use. I like to keep a level plane in how I hunt and the equipment that I use and not have too many peaks and valleys. And that's where I think the extremists come in. So I don't, my loadout that we're gonna talk about briefly here in a few minutes isn't ultra light and ultra compact, but it's also not super inexpensive, bulky, and heavy either. My saddle rig is ultra light, but it's not one extreme or the other. So I want everybody to understand that you might have your own gear, you might have your own methodologies. If you're an experienced is there anybody in here experienced in the backcountry? Raise your hands. I know one person is. Anybody else? Okay, how many people here are experienced saddle hunters? Raise your hands. Okay, a few of you. So what your gear is and how that works for you, me up here speaking, I'm not trying to convince anybody that my setup is the right way to do it. Your setup is your setup, and I'm not an extremist in that thought process, so I want to set that for everybody to understand. Why I do what I do. I love the backcountry for a couple of reasons, and I love to backcountry tree saddle hunt for one very particular reason. Getting into the backcountry for me is a cleansing experience. It heals me mentally, emotionally, and physically, even though I'm breaking myself down when I'm out there doing it. I crave the backcountry. Anybody here a turkey hunter and watched the video or the movie by The Colonel and the Fox? The Colonel is a very talented writer. The guy's brilliant. And he put pen to ink and kind of coined the mantra of, I don't turkey hunt because I want to, I turkey hunt because I have to. I feel the same way about the backcountry. There's so many different ways that I can pursue elk, deer, turkey, black bear, so many different methodologies. I don't go in the backcountry because I want to. I go there because I have to, because it literally feeds my soul. That's my biggest why. But here's the cool part. Anybody here want to go backcountry? Raise some hands. One. There we go. Quite a few. Of those hands, how many of you have that dream tied to an elk hunt out on the West Coast? Raise some hands. So pretty much everybody that is aspiring to be a backcountry hunter is going to head out west to do it for elk. What I'm going to talk to you about today is going backcountry east of the Mississippi. I mean, I do it nationwide, but we're going to focus more on doing it east of the Mississippi, primarily in the Appalachian Mountains, and employing the modern tree saddle while you're doing it. And that gives you the capability of hunting from an elevated position over animals that are not used to that pressure. It is absolutely amazing. It is so much fun. This picture is from the Appalachian Mountains before I went in for a November muzzleloader hunt. We were packed in. It was a very successful hunt. We had a great time. I didn't have to drive from the eastern shore of Maryland all the way out to Colorado to execute this hunt. I drove 5 hours from my house. It's awesome. So, when Chris Leopard and the Expo crew asked me to present for you guys, they wanted me to focus on the whitetail experience because that's what most guys are hunting out of a tree saddle. I created these two documents for the NRA show this last February because they contracted me to speak on this topic or a similar topic as well. And I wanted to share this with you guys because I think it's really important, especially since as you looked around the room a few minutes ago, all of the new or expiring backcountry hunters that raised their hand were tying that dream to a very expensive elk hunt. I created a document. This is a copy and paste document. One, if you can see it from back there, is a backcountry, non-resident, do-it-yourself hunt for spring turkey. And this one over here is for archery elk. These documents are cookie cutter. Anything that's different is in red font. So you can see that most of the documents for both hunts are in black. They're the same. Spring turkey backcountry is the farm league to elk, archery elk in September if that was a professional sport. That's the way I look at it. They are so similar in execution in everything that you do other than what's in red. So if you look at this, we're gonna run through this outline real quick. I don't want to burn too much time on this. They both require you to identify your target states. They both require you to obtain license and tags. They both require you to determine the required time for your hunt. They both require you to identify your location. You start e-scouting, you organize your gear, you obtain and fill your gear gaps, you plan your meals and nutrition, which we're gonna talk about here in a little bit, where you begin physical training, you practice calling, you plan your harvest recovery, you plan your trophy mount, you study tactics and topography, you depart, you execute the hunt. This is where you verify your e-scouting with boots on ground. This is where you adjust your hunt to sign and pressure, and you call and engage with the animal, and then you return. And hopefully you're successful. So let's talk about what's not the same about a backcountry spring turkey hunt and a September archery elk hunt. Obviously the time of year, so we're not going to go into that. Let's talk about your license and tags and availability of said license and tags. Across the lower 48, there are, I think, 2 states left where you can buy over-the-counter elk tags. One is Idaho, and I believe there's a few over-the-counter tags in Utah. I do not believe there are any other over-the-counter elk tags in the United States. Now, Kentucky doesn't have a point system, but it's a straight-up lottery, but it is still a draw. Idaho is the last true over-the-counter for non-residents. But for turkey, it's the exact opposite. There's very few states in the lower 48 that require some type of a draw or have limited potential for non-residents. You can hunt nationwide for turkey in a lot of those states. You can purchase over-the-counter 2 or 3 tags. So there's so much more availability for a turkey hunter. And then the price of those licenses and tags for turkey is astronomically different than an elk tag. Now let's talk about time and distance. Your travel time for a turkey hunt, depending upon where you live in the state of Maryland, so I live on the eastern shore of Maryland. Can't really go backcountry on the eastern shore of Maryland. So I drive to the Appalachians. I can be in the foothills of the Appalachians in 5 hours. So if I have a 4-day weekend, I'm hunting the day that I depart, and I can hunt the day that I have to return home. If you're going to pursue elk and you live on the eastern seaboard, it's going to take you a minimum of 2 days to travel out and a minimum of 2 days to return. So that's 4 days of travel for your entire hunt time. That can really cut into somebody's vacation time or personal time off, however you reference that. So and then we have to factor the cost of that travel. Now you can cut that travel time down by flying, but then you're limited on how much gear you can take, and you have to figure out how you're going to get your harvest home, which is a big consideration. So that's up there in red. Now, here's the big one. We're gonna talk about your success rate. Turkey hunting has a very high success rate. Elk hunting does not. They advertise that nationwide, it is a 10% success rate across the board for elk hunting. Of that 10%, they estimate that the same 90% of hunters are a part of that 10% every single year. And the majority of that 90% are people that are residents of a state that has in-state elk hunting, and they are boots on the ground, tracking and scouting elk all the time, and they're doing it year after year. The likelihood of you as somebody living on the eastern seaboard of drawing that elk tag and going out on your first backcountry hunt and having success, especially if it's a DIY, a do-it-yourself hunt, realistically, you're spending a lot of time and money to go on a backpacking trip while you're holding your bow or rifle. That's the reality of it. When you could choose to pursue whitetail, or you could choose black bear or turkey in the Appalachian Mountains in your backyard, save a whole lot of money, a whole lot of vacation time, and you can still execute the same style of hunt right here, east of the Mississippi. And this is what we're really gonna talk about. I want everybody, oh yeah, do you even turkey hunt, man? Backcountry turkey hunting has become one of my most favorite things to do because it brings me as close to elk hunting out west that I can get. You're doing everything the same, and it's a ton of fun. So, where do I do it? Where can you backcountry hunt? It doesn't require 8,000 to 10,000 feet of elevation. It doesn't take a massive wilderness area somewhere in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Utah. I can name all those western states for you, and you can see this massive mountain range over here that's just calling to all of us, right? I am telling you that you have just as much opportunity east of the Mississippi running right up through here. And in actuality, I would happily take the challenge. If anybody in this room said, "Hey, Aaron, we want you to validate this. We're gonna go ahead and sponsor you, and you're gonna go out and you're gonna tackle an over-the-counter tag in Oklahoma this year, backcountry style for whitetail." Happily, I will 100% do that, and I can utilize my mapping engines that I use. I could break down the public lands, and I could use the terrain features there to locate what I think would hold quality whitetail. I can pack into that area and get away from human beings, and I can hunt out of my tree saddle over whitetail that are not used to that elevated pressure. Hands down, I know I can do it, and I love doing it. So this is a big macro view of the United States and where all these great mountains are for us to go get backcountry into the wilderness. This is what I do. Here's a micro. I just grabbed a screenshot out of the Appalachian Mountains for you guys. So this is 5 hours from us, give or take. But what I like about this is I have national forest trails on each side of this canyon system. And it gets pressure. There are guys that trail hunt that. And when I say trail hunt, it's the same thing as road hunting. They park their car on one end, and they put on a day pack, and they grab their bow or their muzzleloader or their rifle, and they just walk this trail trail hunting until they get all the way to the top. And some guys, but they might run an entire loop around this area, or they'll have their hunting partner drive around and park on the top side of it, and then they'll meet halfway, and they might just bisect each other, and then the other guy hits the truck and he drives back around and meets his buddy. They do it all day long. But what they don't do is they don't drop down into this canyon and come up over here onto this other peak and tackle all of this compounding terrain that you're looking at. This is untouched territory, and they don't do it because this distance here is almost 2 miles across as a crow flies. It takes too much time and effort on their part to come in on this trail, find accessible topography to drop down in here and get up into this quality hunting. They don't want to do it. And furthermore, they don't want to get the animal out. And I've had a lot of people, when I talk about this, say to me, a deer or a turkey is not worth that effort. And I don't understand that, because I don't hunt necessarily for the animal. I hunt for the experience. And that experience is getting out into the wilderness and doing things that the common man does not do. It's exhilarating. So this is the kind of stuff that I look for. Now, I'm not saying that this is my prime choice on where I would go hunt, but this is a prime example of what you can do by loading up your pack for 2 or 3 days or 4 or 5 days and picking a spot, whether you want to pitch low right on a water source or pitch high and have to go on water runs every day or two so that you can have water for hydration and for your meals and other things that you need. But you can go in there and pitch, and then if you have the right setup, you can go climb trees and kill deer. It's an absolute blast. So I've been doing this for a while. I haven't talked about that yet, so we'll cover that in this slide. I started backcountry hunting in 1996 in Washington State. I was born and raised in Washington State and grew up hunting Roosevelt elk and black-tailed deer and black bear. This is in the Blue Mountains in 2003. Now, I don't have pictures really from 1996 into the early 2000s because we didn't carry cameras. And to be honest with you, at that time frame, we didn't even carry water. I grew up in a hunting camp. My father and my grandfather, they didn't carry water on their person when we went hunting. We had fanny packs that had our license and tags, a little Ziploc to kill kit in it, and we had a Snickers bar, maybe an apple, and we had some Hunter Orange Engineers tape, and that great big 8-pound realistic handheld CB radio with a 7-foot antenna. We all carried one. That was in my fanny pack, and I had an old buck knife, a fixed blade on my belt. That's what we carried. We didn't carry all this new fancy, which I rely on, food, nutrition, and hydration products or water. We just didn't carry it. Didn't carry a camera either, so I don't have selfies and I don't have pictures of my camp and all that. But this is in 2003 in the Blue Mountains in eastern Washington. September archery elk. You can see that my camp is really rudimentary. I went as lightweight as I could possibly go. This is my sleep system. I have a Thermarest, very thin Thermarest pad, and a Gore-Tex Bivy. I had no sleeping bag. I just slept in all my clothes inside that Gore-Tex Bivy bag. And this is Dwight Schrute was my idol growing up. I don't know if anybody here recognizes the name of Dwight Schrute. He was a Western archer primarily, and he was very well known for mule deer. Hint, hint, Chris Leppert. It's 3 or 4 decades old in some of his information, but the guy was a mule deer killing machine. That's what he was known for, but he did some backcountry hunting and he was my idol. This was his pack design. It was very modular. So that's what you see here. This was my second night packed in. I made it into a spring and I hunted off of this spring location for several days. Just had an absolute blast. Let's fast forward to last hunting season. This is at Green River State Park. Anybody familiar with Green River State Park in Maryland? Yes, no? No? A couple people? All right, so I packed into Green River. This pitch site is 0.88 miles in from the trailhead. And I had the whole state park to myself. I didn't see another person. Because nobody really wants to go in there. Now, somebody may have walked by my camp, because I was camped right off of, I was camped in between the trail and the creek, water source. But I was up before dark and I was gone. So if somebody walked in hunting the trail throughout the day, maybe they did. But when I was up in the real good quality terrain features, moving around, spotting and stalking, I never saw another hunter. It's that simple. So if we went back to this is when you're gonna pick your state, you pick your area, and you start using your mapping engines. Now my favorites, I use 4. I use Onyx, I use Spartan Forge, I use Go Hunt, and I use Google Earth. I use all 4 of those. My 2 go-to are Onyx and Google Earth, and that's only because I've been using Onyx for so long. Spartan Forge and Go Hunt, they're phenomenal, and that's why I use those as well. I use all 4 of those tools, but when I'm gonna go someplace and I say, I want a backcountry here, I don't need 15 miles with 10,000 feet of elevation. I need topography that looks to me like the average guy is not going to go there. And then I plan my hunt and I go there. And more times than not, I can pitch a site on or off trail and I don't see anybody else for days. Let's talk about my backcountry loadout a little bit. Unfortunately, Chris only gave me an hour. There's no way that I can cover everything and what I do to execute a 3 or 4 day backcountry hunt in 1 hour for you guys. It's just I can't do it. So we're gonna do a quick overview. And this image is a couple of years old, so there's a few items in here that have changed. But the 3 things that you, as an aspiring backcountry hunter, have to be concerned with. The 3 primary things is food, water, and shelter, and fireball. Those 3 things are the primary things that you have to be focused on. And there is a man sitting here today that learned the hard way that you never leave your trailhead without having food, water, shelter, and fireball. Those 3 things are mandatory. Outside of that, we can start getting into some comfort or Gucci gear stuff, all right? Now, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have some pretty high-end stuff. You can get some very affordable baseline backpacking gear, go in and harvest animals. Your stuff might be a little bit heavier than mine, and it may not be as waterproof as mine, or it may not be as moisture wicking as mine, but you can still get the gear, put together a baseline backpacking kit, and you can get into the wilderness and you can hunt animals away from everybody else, right? So as I'm looking at all of you, I'm looking at probably a solid ratio that when I'm at a show and I'm talking to folks, I am one person of 20 or 30 people that will take the time and effort to go backcountry after deer and turkey, and everybody else will not do it. The odds are in my favor, right? I absolutely love it. So, a couple of things that you're going to need. You have to have a compass. I prefer a GPS, but I always carry both because electronics fail. And I have this happen more often than not, and I've had it happen with Onyx and Spartan Forge both, that when you turn them on, because you can download maps, they give you a 180. So you think you're supposed to go that way, but when you pull up your map, your offline map, it's telling you to go the other way. So I always verify that with my Garmin and or my compass. And I have been standing in the bottom of a canyon at 9 o'clock at night, navigating back to where I know my camp is, and I'll pull out my phone to check my map, and I'll even have the trail. Sometimes I track my routes throughout the day just for fun, because I like burning battery on my portable power packs by having to recharge stuff at night, right? I mean, why wouldn't I do that? But I'll pull open that mapping system, and it's telling me that I'm supposed to go back the other way. So I highly encourage you to carry the Garmin. Any type of a GPS. I prefer the Garmin InReach, and always have a compass with you. I always have a bino pack. I always carry binoculars. I always have my rangefinder, regardless of the animal that I'm pursuing. Always, always. Trekking poles. Man, when I was younger, I used to laugh at people that use trekking poles. Is there anybody in here that does not use trekking poles? Please raise your hand. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Hands are starting to go up. 5, 6. All right, so after I lost my leg, navigating through the mountains, especially with a 50, 60, 70, 80-pound pack on your back, I need trekking poles, because if not, I face plant often. So I started using trekking poles. I am here to tell you that trekking poles save you so much energy and make you much more efficient when you're traveling off trail, especially when you're tackling steep terrain. They're a game changer. I strongly recommend that you go after trekking poles. Now, I'm not going to push high-end trekking poles. You can go to Walmart and get a set of carbon trekking poles at Walmart, and they're going to work just fine. You have to have a stove system. I use a jet boil. Now, remember, I stated in the beginning that I'm not an extremist. You can find and put together ultralight, ultra-compact stoves. They're out there. I don't care for them because they're in several different pieces. A lot of them are dainty, they break easily, and a lot of them aren't that windproof. They require some type of windscreen. I like the jet boil because it's self-contained and it's compartmentalized. So my gas canister, everything fits right inside that jet boil. I just pull it out, put it together, fire it up, use it, put it all back together, drop it into my pack, and I'm off. I don't have to worry about dropping small parts all over the ground and something being broke when I need it. So the jet boil. Game bags. Some people hunt without game bags. I will tell you that I made the mistake this last spring on a backcountry turkey hunt. I was so fired up that when I loaded up my pack to make the trek off the mountain back down to my camp, I didn't pull the game bag out of my pack. I didn't put my turkey in said game bag. I just loaded it on the meat shelf and I started hoofing it down the mountain. And I was alone. I did have a hunting partner that was coming in that evening. And I got back to camp, and we did what we did, and I really didn't pay attention to my pack. 3 days later, my pack stunk so bad because I had turkey blood in it directly in my pack, and I had to break my pack down completely and do a good wash on it because it was so foul. Just that simple barrier of a quality meat bag will protect not only your harvest, but it's going to protect your gear as well. And I mean, realistically, that was turkey season. That would ruin your deer hunt, your elk hunt, or your bear hunt if you or your buddy filled a tag and one of you didn't use a meat bag and or ensure that your pack was somewhat clean, and then your pack was foul for the rest of the hunt. I mean, that is a scent hazard that I don't want to have to deal with. And seriously, by the time we got back to the truck after that turkey hunt, my pack stunk so bad it was like it was triggering the gag reflex. It was pretty gross. So I highly recommend that if you're going to be backcountry hunting, you need to have good meat bags. A good sleeping bag is important. A sleeping pad, uber important, and then good food. And I'm not going to dive deep into nutrition. We do have a nutrition specialist sitting in the room on Point Venture Foods. I'm a huge fan, guys. I've tried almost every popular store-bought brand of freeze-dried food on the market. There's some really good ones. Peak Refuel is a great option. The sodium content is ridiculous, and so is the size of the portion. And the problem that you're going to run into with a large portion, high sodium backpacking meal, especially on an extended trip, if you're out for 5, 7, 10 days, you're getting back to camp late at night, and you eat within sometimes an hour, maybe 30 minutes of crawling into your bag to go to sleep at night. When you do that repetitively, that sodium builds up and you wake up swollen. It's miserable, and it really starts bogging you down. And I I have a problem with my eating throttle. So I can't take a peak refuel meal and eat half of it and then go put the other half in a Ziploc bag and hoist it up in a tree in my bear bag and walk away from it. If I cook it, I'm eating it. And so I'm just taking in all that sodium. So I like the single smaller portions of a smaller meal. I spread load my food throughout the day, and On Point's a very low sodium option. And they're local here to PA. Everything is sourced locally. I'm giving a big plug to a company that's sitting in the room that's actually here at the show with us. But I'm a big believer in their product. There are some other companies out there that make some lower sodium, single serving content that you can order off of the internet or find at like REI, Shields, those big box stores. But find yourself a really good freeze-dried meal that you like, and then try said meal. When you're in the backcountry, especially because everybody here hasn't done it yet, one thing that you're gonna learn, and you learn it quick, you need the comfort items. And again, this is where I'm not an extremist. I carry some things in my bag that I really don't need. I have a little rechargeable sleeping pad filler. I don't blow into my pad anymore. I don't sit and fill up the bag and squeeze. I just attach it to my sleeping pad and I turn it on. I just let her go. And it has a light on it so I can hang it up inside my shelter when I'm done. And at night, I have a reading light. And again, I'm not burning unnecessary battery life on my rechargeable headlamp and or my phone. I've got my little fan in there. It's a comfort item. I'm more than happy to carry said weight in that little comfort item. You have to have your comforts. Your food is a comfort item. There's nothing worse than getting back to your pitch site or arriving at your pitch site at night when you're cold, wet, and tired, and you heat up a meal that you don't like. It's miserable. It's deflating mentally. So choose your meals, choose them early, and try them. That way, if you're like, wow, this tastes like garbage, go find another meal. Because like I said, at the end of the day, you want that meal that you're looking forward to. It's like, when you're in the suck, whether you're by yourself, which I do prefer to do this by myself. I do enjoy doing it with other people, but if I'm given the option, be like, Aaron, you get one backcountry hunt this year, I'm going by myself. But you can be in the suck, and you can look at your partner, and he can be in the suck, and one of you is gonna say, man, I can't wait to have this, and then whatever your favorite meal is tonight, it is gonna be so good. Again, it's that creature comfort. I encourage you to try out all of your meals. A water filter, gotta have a water filter. You have to have a way to get water because again, water, food, shelter. Water is more important than food and shelter. You can survive for a lot of days without a shelter because you can make a shelter. You can survive a lot of days without food because you can live off rock tripe if you can find rock tripe or other worms, beetles, bugs, there's other things in your natural environment that you can live on. But you can only live for about 3 days without water. And then you're gonna die. So you have to have that water filter. All right, so that's that gear loadout. This deer, how much we got on time? We have plenty of time. Excellent. So I've killed nice animals in my time. I have. And the year before I shot this 7-point, I went out to Nebraska and I harvested the biggest whitetail I have so far. It was a 170-inch whitetail. I was on private property, but I was right on the fence line to public. And I rattled and grunted a 170-inch whitetail off of public into my tree, and I made just a dream come true. At that point in time, I didn't think that I was going to be able to top that experience. A year later, I pack in to the George Washington National Forest. I was alone. I climbed up a mountain that I'd scouted during turkey season to a tree that I had already picked out. I literally looked at my hunting partner and I said, I am going to kill a deer out of this tree. Did a ton of e-scouting, did exactly what I told you that I did earlier. I used all of my mapping engines. I broke the area apart. I monitored prevalent winds. I looked at the temperature swings. I packed into that area. I got up at 3:30 in the morning. I climbed the mountain. I moved down to that tree. I had a nice, easy climb up that tree. I settled in, just relaxed. And when the sun came up, I started to rattle, I started to grunt. And an hour later, he came in and I shot him 10 yards from my tree with my muzzleloader. It was so rewarding. The best part of that hunt was when I found him here at this location. There was a cutout through the hardwoods on the side of this mountain, and I could look across the canyon to the opposing ridgeline. And after I had him all quartered out and ready to pack, I pulled out my jet boil, I fired up a cup of coffee, and I just sat down and just soaked it all in and just looked across at the other ridgeline and I was all alone in my world, in my experience, doing my thing. No other humans around. It's exhilarating. So this is where I have it all broke down. This is one of my items that I don't leave the truck without, period. This is called a killing pad. There's probably other companies that make similar things. This is made by Rack Addicts. It's like $24.95. It's a 6x6 ripstop material, waterproof pad. It weighs like 7 ounces. I've had this thing for years, and it fills a multitude checks a multitude of boxes for me. It's a ground pad. I can use it for my equipment. I can use it to put my meat on it. I can use it as an emergency source of warmth, like space blankets used to be really popular. I can use this for a space blanket. I can use this for a rain jacket. I can use this for a hasty shelter. I can just curl up on the ground and go sleep. If I get lost, I can use this as a marking panel. I can use this for a whole lot of things, but primarily I use it for my meat pad. And that's where I was at on the side of the mountain as I was getting ready to load my pack up. So, talking about the backcountry experience, you don't have to go all the way out west to work hard. You can do it right here in the Appalachian Mountains. From the time I left my Argali shelter at 3:30 in the morning until I finished hauling my meat and equipment back that afternoon, I covered 8.25 miles up and down the mountain. I didn't have to go to Colorado to do that. And by the time I got that deer to my truck, which was an additional 3 miles away, and then came back to camp, because I had other hunters that were coming in, and I had another deer tag to fill. By the end of that whole process, that was 14.25 miles for me to get that deer to the cooler. Again, some of you might be thinking, I'm just going to go ahead and gamble on that elk. I'm not putting that much time and effort into a deer. Thank you, because that's one less person I have to worry about drinking the Kool-Aid and joining me out in the backcountry of the Appalachian Mountains. If you do, if you do decide to do it and I run into you, maybe we'll share camp, because I'm going to be excited to see you out there. That's why I do this. I'm a firm believer that knowledge is power. I believe that sharing that knowledge is powerful, and I love to do it. So truly, if I do bump into you out there, I hope we can share a pitch site together. But I can't stress it enough. You can get that backcountry experience right here in your own state. This buck here, this 7-point, far more memorable to me than that 170-inch whitetail I shot out in Nebraska. If I had to relive one of those hunting experiences again, I choose this guy all day, every day. And I'm looking forward to it hanging on my wall. And it's gonna hang right next to that 170-inch deer. And if somebody asks me to tell a story, I'm not gonna talk about that 170-inch deer. I'm gonna talk about this guy right here. So now let's get into the tree saddle, because I'm sure some of you probably wanna know what gear I use to climb trees. So again, we talk about not being extremists, but at the same time, when you're gonna put your life and all of your hunting equipment on your back, there's a overused saying, but it's a really, really good one, and it really is meaningful. Ounces equals pounds, pounds equal pain. And an ounce in is a pound out when you've been carrying it all day, those ounces get heavier with every step, especially if you're climbing up and down the mountain faces, right? I try to get my saddle rig for this as light as I possibly can while still retaining a little bit of comfort. I use a Latitude saddle. I really like Latitude's gear. Choose your saddle of choice, but try to find that balance between saddle comfort and saddle weight. Now, I've been using the Method 2. Originally, I had the Method 2 for years. This year, I am switching over to the Maverick, and there's two reasons why I'm going to switch to the Maverick for this hunting season. One issue is, how many people in here have used or played around with the 2-panel saddle? A lot of people. You get your panels kind of mixed around sometimes, and then you've got to sit and fuss with them and get your panels straightened out and everything. Sometimes it takes 1 or 2 minutes, and sometimes it might take 10 or 15 minutes depending upon how tired you are in your environment. And one thing that I've grown tired of is when I get back to camp at night, and after I get some food in my belly and I'm looking forward to crawling into my bag, I have to get everything ready for the next morning, because usually when I come out of the tree in the evening, I've been out all day, and I just want to get everything loaded, pack loaded, so I can get back into camp, get the weight off my back, cook a meal, see my buddy, or if I'm alone. I do have a podcast. I record every night that I'm out in the wild. I sit at my camp and I record, then I go to bed. I have to sit there and prep my gear, and part of that preparation is ensuring that my panels and my saddle is set up for a swift and efficient deployment in the morning when I'm at the base of my tree. Having a single panel takes that equation off my plate. I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's a single panel. The other reason why is the Maverick is lighter than the Method 2. So by using this new saddle, I have my gear down to 7 pounds. Right at 7 pounds. So I am going to the Maverick this year. I use a single Latitude carbon speed stick. Now, in the world according to Aaron Ritter, I believe that there's 3 climbing styles in the tree saddle world. I believe that there's multi-stick, I believe that there's 1 stick, and then I believe there's the single stick. The difference between the 1 stick and the single stick is the 1 stick is self-contained. You have your step, you have the stick and the platform. It's 1 unit. And I own one, I own an Ewo. And I hunt with multi-sticks. But my preferred method is what I call the single stick. It's 1 stick, and then I have some other perch point that's on the tree. And I have hunted just with this stick, but it's typically only for a couple of hours at a shot. I usually have a platform, or I have the Bowman ring of steps. For my backcountry rig, I use this stick and the Bowman ring of steps. And that's what I hunt out of. It's very comfortable, it's very efficient, it's a very lightweight system that allows me to hunt 360 degrees around that tree. It does require the right kind of footwear, and we'll talk about that in just a second. I carry 2 dump pouches on my saddle. With these dump pouches, I can fit everything that you see here. It does not require a backpack or anything else. I can fit everything inside those pouches, including my Bowman ring of steps. So I have my 40 foot of line. I have my hoist. I have my lineman's belt, and then I have my Mad Rock. Even though I carry 40 feet of line for my tether, I always have a lineman's belt in my pouch, 1 for safety, and 2 because I don't look for tall, straight trees. I like to get in nasty stuff. So I'm gonna have to circumvent limbs or bifurcations in trees. And I encourage everybody here to never ever disconnect their lifeline from that tree, whether you're 5 feet off the ground or 25 feet off the ground. Because it takes 1 shift in your platform or your stick or your body weight or to something to catch your attention, and you lose focus on what you're doing and you bail out of your system. It's not worth the risk. So I always have my liner's belt in there. And again, that's a little bit extra weight that I have to carry, but I can fit it all in these pouches. So I carry it. And then I have my gear strap. That's my setup. And I hunt from dark to dark that way. I can load this on top of all of my required equipment for backcountry. I can get into those locations, and again, I'm climbing any tree in the wilderness area that I want to elevate myself over animals that are not accustomed to that threat. So let's cover boots really quick. I wear Crispies, and I'm not pushing a brand. What I am going to encourage you to look at, consider when you're tree saddle hunting, especially if you're going to go and do it for long periods of time, is you need to find the stiffest boot that you can get. Because what that provides you is almost a secondary platform. So when I'm perched on the top of this stick or on my ring of steps, my Crispy Thors, they call it a 4-flex, they're super stiff. That's like having individual platforms in my soles. There's no flex in them, so I don't have any foot fatigue. And I can stand on that rig from dark to dark. And I've done it when it's 20 degrees out. It's so much better than having a lightweight, like Solomon makes a great boot, but I haven't found Solomon's to be stiff enough for me to be comfortable on a single stick with a ring of steps or without a major platform. And honestly, even with my regular platform that I'll use for typical hunts, I still prefer that really stiff sole because again, I don't get any foot fatigue, which translates up through your legs and your lower body and your lower back. And that's just something I try to take out of my saddle system. So I would encourage you to look for some really, really stiff boots. From there, that's my kit right there. So we've talked about why I do what I do. We've talked about where I do what I do. We've talked briefly about the gear that I use to get me safely to my location and to live and survive safely on location. And now we've talked about what I use to get in that elevated position by packing it in along with everything else. So now I'm going to ask you a question. I love asking people this question. Are you a hunter or do you like to hunt? I'm a hunter. I put a tremendous amount of time and effort into what I do. And I will translate that time and effort to every animal that I wish to pursue. So I go into the backcountry after elk. I go into the backcountry after whitetail deer. I go into the backcountry after turkey and after bear, and I am 100% willing to pack those critters out. If I catch you in the backcountry with a harvest, I will help you pack it out. I love, as my friend Andy sitting in, Anthony sitting in the crowd, he calls it the grind. I absolutely live for the grind, and I will 100% help you pack your critter out. Are you that guy? Because if you're not, if you're hey, it's a week before season, I'm gonna go grab my bow and shoot, and I would prefer to just walk 100 to 200 yards from my truck out to the blind and shoot a deer, and then go get my cart and cart my deer out, this might not be the style for you. But if you are that hunter, and if you think that you want to go out west and pursue elk backcountry, and you want to do it yourself, I'm going to encourage you to do one thing. Don't wait until you get that tag and you're going to go out after that animal and have that be the first time you put your life on your back and go into the wilderness. Whether you want to go hunt or not, at the very least, I encourage you to drive somewhere and put all of your gear on your back and walk in for a weekend and live. Even if all you're going to do is walk around and take pictures, or if you're going to walk from one point, just pick points and just hike every day with your stuff. Please go execute a backpacking trip before you sink all the time and money and energy into going out west for that coveted elk hunt and living off your back. Because it could be, you might find that just backpacking into someplace is the most miserable experience that you've ever had, and you're gonna save yourself all that time and money. All right? So that's, usually I get a little bit deeper into this question here because it's a lot of fun to converse about, but I wanted to end on that note. So about me, again, I am Limitless Outdoors. You can find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook. I do have a website. It's limitless.outdoors or limitlessoutdoors.com. You can get me on email. I have my email right there. If you have any questions, if you want to talk further in detail about backcountry hunting and what I use, or get more specific into gear or why I use certain pieces of gear, by all means reach out to me. I do have a YouTube channel. It's pretty grassroots, but I do have a YouTube channel. I also am the founder and president of a nonprofit. It's 501c3. It's archery based. So I am a 28-year Navy veteran. I did not lose my leg in combat, but I did serve 9 years on a metal leg, full duty deployable for special operations. I loved what I did. When I retired, I wanted to help other amputees, and I wanted to leverage the sport of archery to do that. So I founded the A3G. It's the annual Amputee Archery Grant Initiative. I choose one amputee every year. I put together an archery and outdoor package for them. We send them to the gas facility in Kentucky. We build their bow, and they get one-on-one coaching with the high-level shooting staff that Eric Griggs has there on site. And then in October, we send them on an all-inclusive whitetail hunt into Texas, and they shoot a deer on a private ranch with their bow. It's pretty awesome. So I get to do that now. And this is the first public announcement from Limitless Outdoors. I am authoring my first book. I'm halfway through the manuscript. This is potentially the rough version of what my cover art might be. I'm hoping to have it on Amazon, published early in 2025, and it's based on what we've talked about today. It is pursuing the trophy of experience by backcountry hunting. And just to give you a little more of a flavor, I had somebody propose a question to me a couple of weeks ago about the hyphen between the dates on a headstone. From when you were born until you die, every headstone has a hyphen. That hyphen represents everything that that individual experienced or accomplished in their life, regardless of how old they were. And that impacted me pretty hard. That's pretty resounding thought process on that hyphen. And it really started getting my wheels spinning. And that's kind of what I based the book on, is like, what have I done in the backcountry as a hunter between those dates? And that's why it's 1972 to present. That hyphen is still going for me, and that's what this book is about. So with that said, are there any questions from anybody before we shut this down?
Good. There we go.
Aaron, I appreciate the conversation so far for the seminar. There's an area we've been hunting the last few years where we're having to pack in, and we're doing day trips, but it's 2.5 to 3 miles in one way. It's pretty terrible. We're talking about this year doing a base camp back in there and hunt that area for 4 or 5 days. My question is for you, how close or how far do you like to put a base camp from where you're going to hunt, especially if you know a very general area, within, say, 400 to 500 acre piece of public? Not saying the whole piece like that, might be a couple 100,000 acres, but an area you really want to focus on. How close or how far away do you want to set up camp, and your thought process on lower elevation versus higher elevation based off where the deer are at, if you're specifically talking whitetails?
Man, that is an awesome question. There's a lot of different answers for that. And there's so many different factors. One, is it flat ground, or do you have a lot of elevation? There's a lot of elevation. Okay. Do you have any major trails that people traffic, whether it's hunters or civilian hikers?
Yes, you got a couple major hiking trails, not necessarily in the area that we hunt, but old logging road systems that are overgrown.
Okay, so you can use those to your advantage because the animals are used to human noise and scent on those thoroughfares, right? So even whether you're 100 yards off that trail or you just pitch your camp right next to or on that trail, the animals are used to that. You can use that in your favor. The next question that you have to ask yourself is, where's my water source and how close do I want to be to it? And then there's the school of thought. I mean, we know what thermals do, right? We know where we want to be in the mornings, we know where we want to be midday, and we know where we want to be in the evenings. And the animals know where they want to be at those different points as well. So if you put your camp low, then you know that the majority of the day, your camp scent's going uphill to where the animals might be. So in that scent cone, you might push critters outside of that scent cone because they're smelling your camp all day. And it may not happen on day 1. But by day 3, you will have pushed smart nannies or wise old bucks out of that wind cone, and they may shift to other spots. And then you might just find yourself hunting outside of that wind cone, which is, I mean, it's kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis anyhow. Or you hunt high, and that way throughout the duration of the day, your scent is not falling all day long, right? It's only falling in the evening time or when those thermals are dropping. That's what I look at when I'm breaking topography down. I start asking myself, where am I packing in from? How much activity is in there? Those trails, no matter where you go, Forest Service trails, access trails, you're going to get day hikers, fun hikers. You might get ultra runners. You're going to get other hunters that are just trail hunting or road hunting. Again, you can use that noise and scent to your advantage. And then I start asking myself, you know, if I go high, which I would prefer to do, am I out of the weather conditions, and where are my water sources, and how am I going to get my water? Or you can say, by my topography, I think that I can pitch here near the water source, and maybe I'm a half mile away from where I want to target my hunting area. That deer that I showed you, that's up here, that's on my back right now, you know, he was just shy of a mile away from my camp by how I had to travel to get there, right? But where I was pitched, even though I was pitched in the bottom of the canyon next to the water source, my scent wasn't traveling up to him. And also I was pitched where I wasn't gonna hunt because the mountain lore was so bad I couldn't hunt it. So I put in all those environmental factors on there, and then I make my game plan. Now here's the other cool part. Backcountry hunting, if you prepare it for it correctly, is no different than tree saddle hunting, and why we do it when you get right down to the grassroots of it. You're mobile. So if you pitch and it's not working, you move. So that's the other key thing, is when you're breaking an area down, we already do it. If you're looking at that area every day, do you have primary, secondary, tertiary places you're gonna go hunt depending upon pressure, sign, and winds? You do the same thing with your pitch site, man. If it's not working, you move it. And then you go hunt. If one tree's not working, you move to another tree. And then if none of that's working, then you move to the next spot and you do it again, and eventually it's gonna pay off. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, it does. And that's when you talk about like some of those creeks, it's like we'll have cameras back in there. We run cameras in there pretty much all year. Yeah, you know, in the evenings, you got deer, bucks dropping down to those creek bottoms, but like a lot of the cover's on the mountain faces. It's not on top, it's all on the side slopes. So it's like you get up top and camp. That's something we thought about doing on like one of the bigger ridge systems that there's a lot more human traffic, but all the long finger points coming off that run for a few miles, you're not finding many guys out there, especially hiking, but also hunting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but yeah, definitely excited to try this out this fall.
Yeah.
It's been walking 6 miles a day.
And I'm telling you, when you do this, and it sounds like you're gonna do it with a group of friends, you're gonna have the time of your life. It's so different than just camping next to your truck or staying in an Airbnb or going to a hotel. It's so much fun. And a lot of the areas that I've hunted, those canyon bottoms and the water sources that are down low, they're hidden. I mean, the does are in there all the time, but the bucks are only in it at night. You know, they're in the dark, outside. I mean, you might get that 40-minute window, you know, that ivory hour in the morning or that ivory hour at night where you're gonna catch them moving down into the bottoms. But what are you gonna do with the rest of your day? And that's where I'm trying to get to that, early in the morning I want to be down in that lower third. And then as the day progresses, maybe you shift your tree and you get to higher ground. So if your area provides the opportunity, pitch high and just stay high. And then, because that's where you're at most of the day. And then depending on what your prevailing winds are doing, use those prevailing winds for that morning hunt, because you can still get down somewhat lower and have that prevailing wind that's overpowering that falling thermal, and it's blowing it uphill for you, and you can catch those bucks coming out of the bottom into legal shooting light, and you're in the money. Anybody else?
Got one right over here.
Hey, so I'm always hunting kind of the Appalachian Mountains. Whenever you're looking at the map, you see four-wheeler trails, hiking trails, the whole 9 yards. There's possibilities for people to be everywhere. So how are you looking at the map and trying to find places where these trails are, if there's trails for miles and miles?
I look for steep. Deer like steep. They're going to take the route of least resistance, right? But they cover steep ground. And just like everybody's already doing it here. You're looking for those secondary ridges, you're looking for those knobs, you're looking for those little flats, those little micro benches where deer are gonna bed down, they're gonna feed, and they have security. That's what I look for. I will pitch right on a main trail, but then I get into areas where you don't have common traffic. And you're gonna find that if you can get your camp 1 mile or 2.5 miles in, you're not gonna have people walking through your stuff. They're gonna stay out on those fringes, and a lot of dudes, they don't wanna be out of sight of their car. Like that same area I told you that I packed in 0.88 miles. On opening day of gun season, I drove that area because I wanted to see how much pressure was in there in modern firearms. So I got up in the morning, I filled up my thermos with some hot coffee, and I just drove the roads to that entire area. I counted 15 hunters that were in trees in orange, which is required, with inside of the road. That's where they went. That's how far they will go to get away to go in to kill a deer. They are within sight of the road. So when you're breaking those maps down, when you look for those places that you're like, man, that might only be 2.5 miles in, but that's 2.5 miles from every point of entry. And it's difficult and challenging. And the average dude is not gonna do it.
Hello?
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. So you're not really looking for distance, you're looking for what's in between the path and where you're wanting to go.
Absolutely.
Backcountry hunting.
And if I can find an area that allows me to pack in 3, 4, 5 miles, and I have that all around me, I will choose that all day, every day. But if I'm in a smaller contained WMU or a state forest or a national forest, and it's a smaller footprint, that's when I really start breaking that down, and I ask myself, if I'm committed to hunting there, I'm going to figure out a way to get away from everybody else. And there's a gentleman here. He's not in here. He's been working with the Elevate Stand folks. I love Jeremy's methodology when he hunts public ground. Whether it's in his home state in New York or when he goes out of state. He looks at an area and he day hunts. He hasn't been backcountry yet, but his day hunt, his morning hunt, his evening hunt it's the same methodology. He looks at an area and says, okay, where is the average guy gonna go? Where's he gonna park, and where's he going to maneuver from to get to a spot where he wants to hunt? And as he's doing that, the average guy is going to push deer into other areas. Where are those deer going to go? And then he comes in from a different point of entry, playing the winds and the topography, and he sets up, and the guy kills big deer. You can do the same thing with your backcountry setup. Where do I need to go to get places? And this is another piece of the puzzle that I bypassed. You can put your setup to get you close to areas where when other people are hunting those fringes, they're pushing animals to you. That's another big advantage to doing what I do. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else? Man, you guys are asking me questions that I thought you were going to ask me more like questions of like, well, tell me about this piece of gear. What kind of pack do you use? Or, you know, stuff like that. No, this is awesome. What else you got? Okay. Hey, it's always humbling for me when I step up on the stage or I'm up here in the front of the room to speak at an expo like this and there's a ton of killers walking around and to have people like you, I get to look at your faces and you're talking to me. It's a very humbling experience. I am an open book, folks, so seriously, if you have any other questions, I may not tell you where my waypoint is, pins that I've dropped, but I will share with you every bit of knowledge that I have to help you and your success. And I'm not kidding when I say, if I encounter you out in the wilderness and we're miles away from the car and you have an animal down, I will drop everything that I'm doing and I will put your meat on my back and we're gonna walk it out. We're gonna laugh and have a lot of fun to do it. One last thing, I carry headphones with me. Because when it really gets crappy and you've got a lot of weight on your back, especially if you're not hunting, you're packing meat out, I plug in the headphones and I just get it on. I use corded headphones, so I'm not burning battery on Bluetooth, but I carry corded headphones in my kill kit, and when it's time to put the weight on your back, I plug in some headbanging music and I roll. That's a little pro tip.
All right, thank you very much, Aaron. This has been a great seminar. Guys, thanks for coming to Aaron. That is our last one for the day today. Tomorrow at 10:30.
Bro, ça tue, ça blesse, ça flingue. Hey, 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 bro, gazo.